Hello, friends, and welcome back to the NPC podcast. I was trying to make it a little.
That was better. That was way better than what I got.
Yeah. Episode number 23. The semifinal season has finished, and now we're going to talk about a little review. We're going to highlight some of our athletes and kind of give our big picture thoughts. And then also, I want to ask these two about how does this change our programming moving forward if the season stays the same as far as the different competitions, different programming, different tester run, but we'll get there at the end. The first thing I want to do, Dom, I'm going to pass it to you first because you went to almost every semifinal.
Everywhere.
Just like, what are big picture thoughts? Obviously, this year was totally different than what we've seen in the past. Like, are there things that you like, things that you disliked about kind of the different programs and the way that they were run this year compared to previous years?
Yeah.
Don't hold back.
I definitely went to all the US ones. I think I went to every single one in the US. Which like the Mayhem Classic and Syndicate are pretty easy to go to for me. But
which was the most well run? Just from a pure logistics, like, you know, behind the scenes.
I don't know how the ones in Europe and stuff went. They looked like French Throwdown looked pretty smooth to me.
It did.
This is crazy. I actually did watch the Korean one just because we have the two Korean girls. Mm-hmm. And that actually looked like it went, they actually have an insane fitness community out there based on what I saw on the live stream. Yeah. So that was kind of cool to see. But as for here, I would probably say like the Classic and Syndicate were like just the most like, I don't even know if professional is the word, but the least amount of error for, I think, in-person qualifying events having to do everything on their own. And I think the reason that is because you had people, just think about the Mayhem Classic. You just have like people who have been a part of CrossFit competitions for such a long time that they kind of know all the things that they hate that CrossFit has done wrong in CrossFit competitions. And they also knew the things that CrossFit does really well, and they can like apply that. And then I think like Syndicate, it's kind of hard to beat Wilson and JR together. Yeah. Like Wilson might be like the best event organizer for a in-person event of all time. And then JR has like successfully ran a comp out of his affiliate for 3 years. And I've been at that comp for the last like 2 years and
done it well.
Every time I walk away from it, I'm like, how does this guy keep everything on time? There's never issues with judging and scoring really. If there is, they actually handle it in a correct way. Like it's the little things. It's really the little things.
I'm going to answer the question too, just because I've thought about this. The Classic was run really, really well. However, there are only 20 females, 20 males. Right. So I'm just going to give that was kind of easier to do. Sure. Syndicate was very impressive because they had the teams going at the same time, more athletes, male, female, a big venue.
Community divisions.
Totally. I thought they did a really, really good job. Just overall, the judges were great. The briefings in the back, the judge that basically briefed the corral every single time did a very good job of this is where you start, this is where you're going to end. These are the things that we're looking for. Like it just was, they did a really, really clean and good job with all of that. The one note, because I didn't go to as many as you did, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. The one thing that still is like, man, I just wish we could get more of this. It just seemed dead the first couple of days. The athletes were awesome, and the intensity in the back was amazing at Syndicate, and the same thing at the Classic. But at Syndicate, there just weren't many fans there on the first day in particular. And it kind of, you look around, it kind of makes me think like, when can we fill these stands? Like when can we get thousands of people coming to a semifinal and cheering on people? Because what happens now is it's usually just family and friends.
Right. I think, and I've heard this might be the way they're going to go next year. But I think the issue, nothing against the athletes that competed and made it in these in-person, but you do need some of the bigger names to draw, right? Just like
Saturday last year at Syndicate was
wild.
Packed. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, right. And even
they had
in the past,
a crazy list.
Like
of
I'm thinking
athletes.
about the year like where Sprague missed by a point, and thinking about how many people were in there during the year, because like you had him and Medeiros, and there was all these guys at Syndicate vying for a spot. Right. And I think we lost that because of the online semifinal.
Yeah.
Took all of those bigger games athletes that have been like top 5 at the games for the past couple of years and took away their in-person comp for people to watch them qualify. And I think there's even an aspect too of like, it's fun to watch when those guys go there and someone that's a little unknown all of a sudden takes a spot.
That's awesome.
Like we missed some of that. Like that was at Syndicate last year. Is like we didn't know if Luke or Seth or Tyler or there was a bunch of dudes who had a chance. Dre had a chance. I think even Nate had a chance, like an outside shot. So you have like 12 dudes going into the last event and 2 or 3 spots are available.
Yeah, you kind of
misses that.
What makes sports special.
Right.
Yeah, the underdog, the upsets, any given Sunday kind of thing. So,
or even watching the best in the sport that you already know are going to execute well.
For sure.
And we started to get a little more of that at the end of these last 2 because we're down to the last couple spots. But earlier in the season, when everybody knows they have time and they can wait for this event or they can wait for online semis, like we even had a ton of people, I think, pull out of the Classic for that. They were like, why go beat myself up early when...
It also becomes exhausting for the consumer. You think about baseball and basketball. I know people are massive fans, but it's like you can't tell me you're as... Well, they will tell me. The true fans, the hardcore fans, are as invested in game 62 in baseball as they are in the postseason, right? But like... Yeah, it's like, all right, if not Classic, then I can do the next one, then I can do the next one, and then I can try another one. It's just, you're not on the edge of your seat wondering if somebody's season is going to get ruined.
And that was something I really thought TFX and Syndicate did a really good job of, is they allocated West athletes, East athletes. I think that was huge because then it puts a semifinal for those athletes. And then I actually even did like that Syndicate, if you made it to the games, you couldn't go. So that you knew which people were on the line this weekend.
Yeah.
And I think what was cool about, at least for this season is it did allow some of those athletes who are usually towards the bottom that don't get spotlight. They got a chance to be at like the top of the leaderboard here. And you had 4 guys like Ty, Jack, Luke, and George, and Connor Volts, and Quinn, and Seth, and all those guys like actually battling for that top spot. And it was guys that typically are maybe in like 15th, 16th, 17th that nobody really pays that much attention to. So it's cool for them to get some spotlight in that area. But I do think we're missing the big star power, right? That our sport wants to see. Like, dude, people pay way more money to go watch Tom Brady throw a football than they do to go watch like freaking Baker Mayfield or something.
Chill, bro.
he's a huge Baker fan.
Chill.
I actually like Baker.
Well, I'm a Brady fan too, but like, come on the Bucs, bro.
In terms of like skill level.
So I'd be interested in like, how would you change it? Like, did you guys like the structure where, all these different semifinals kind of had different programming and that certain athletes went to certain ones and the athletes can kind of pick and choose to some? Or would you rather it be like this systematized, everyone's doing this semifinal with this programming, so on and so, kind of like the old regional system?
I am not a huge fan of online events, like at all. I think it puts a lot of stress on the affiliate in and of itself to perform something that is challenging for them. I think a lot of the requirements that they had for online semis this year they said was supposed to make it easier on affiliates. I thought this was the hardest year of online semifinals for affiliates ever.
Agreed.
Both for age group and everything. I think it was the most challenging possible way they could do anything. So I think CrossFit really needs to re-envision that whole process. I thought it was not good. I would rather have 2 more in-person qualifying events with completely random programming than have that again. Yeah. In my opinion.
If you had it your way, though, I would be more of a fan of uniformity, right? Like in the old regional system with programming. Would you prefer that?
I think so. I actually don't mind the different programming. What I think would be super wise is if CrossFit or Dave, whoever is in charge of that, it's like, okay, you have to have, every semifinal is going to have 6 events. You're not going to have 8 scores. You're not going to have 9 scores. Every single semifinal is going to have 6 scores or 7 scores, whatever they want to do. Doesn't matter. You're going to use games style scoring every single event.
Agreed. Not
different scoring in different events, game style scoring. Then you're going to do a workout that is under 3 minutes, 2 workouts that are 8 to 12 minutes, a workout that is over 20 minutes, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And then give some guidelines on implements. We want 1 upper gymnastics heavy pulling workout. We want 1 very monostructural style workout at least. And then we want 1 very heavy workout.
So essentially giving them a template. Give them a skeleton and then they can fill it out. That'd be a great way to do it, because then you still, like the Classic is going to look different than Syndicate. And
yes, which is cool.
Yes.
Because I want to see what JR thinks is the best programming to get someone to the games based on those guidelines.
What do you think Dave's
I want to see what Rich
pushback
thinks.
to that would be? Like, what do you think he would say to play devil's advocate for yourself? Like, if Dave was like, yeah, what do you think if he disagreed with that, what would he say?
I hope that he wouldn't.
All right.
Because it just sounds so easy.
What if he said something more like,
all you have to do is like send out an email.
Yeah. If he tried,
send.
Or no, I meant like if he tried to give like more of a, hey, I want it more varied than that, you know, or like some sort of more CrossFit. Like,
in my opinion, I think
that's not,
this could be very controversial, but I think CrossFit did it the way they did it this year, including the online semifinal, because they wanted to wipe their hands completely clean of having any responsibility.
Well, it saves a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah.
Saves a ton of money. But I think with everything that happened at the games last year,
that it wasn't just financial. It was also
completely wiped clean of any responsibility until the CrossFit games is probably a very nice feeling. Like even the online semifinals was up to the affiliate to do it all right. If you didn't do it right, it was on you. And even the video review in some sense came down to like what videos were getting voted for and which were not. It was
wild.
It was just like, we're not taking responsibility for anything.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, it felt that
way,
right?
No, I understand in a sense.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, but no legitimate sport would do that, right? Like, I mean, I think back to playing football and how there were standards regardless of where you went, or the same, like golf's a good example of this because there are different tournaments that happen at different levels, but the USGA, which is this governing body for the US and the golf, you know, the golfing world, they still give standards for the way that you play, how you score and all that kind of stuff. It's simple too, right? Like a tournament director can still do whatever they want with their course and change some things, tee times and all that. But we know that these are the standards. And I think the same.
Oh, sorry. Keep going. Sorry.
I was just going to say that's the same thing that CrossFit could do. Even if they wanted to wipe their hands clean a little bit, it could be a simple email. Here's the skeleton.
Yes.
You guys can fill it out. And by the way, like there could still be so much CrossFit variance. If we all sat down and we built a skeleton and then we said, okay, we're going to go in our separate rooms and write programming for the skeleton, it would look totally different.
Yeah, right.
And that's cool. That would be an awesome way to do it.
Right. And that's fun because then at least you know CrossFit is testing the things that they think are important to get you to the games. And so that it's this way, it's covering things that might not show up at the games, because that's something, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I've always seen Dave do this. Like the open covers a specific thing. Mm-hmm. The quarterfinal, if there was one, covered a specific thing. The semifinal or regional covered a specific test and certain like prerequisite movements that you should be having. And over the course of years, those things advanced. Like you had to be getting better at certain things. Things from the games would come down to the regional or semifinal level in a lower volume setting. And then at the games, you would have to be better at it or have a higher skill version of it. And I think it was fun for people to kind of like track that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this person succeeded in the open, in regionals, and at the games. They have every baseline level of fitness across the board. And I think we miss some of that now by not having a standardized thing like that. And we have a lot of this chaos. Like there has not been a handstand push-up going into the games, right? That used to be a staple. Torian. Yeah, right. So one event that test upper pressing that determined whether athletes made it to the games or not. And people who are there that struggle with upper pressing, we have an athlete that struggles with upper pressing that was there. If she was at any other event, because it was all handstand walk dominant, she's one of the best handstand walkers in the entire world. Yep. She probably would have made the games simply because of that.
Well, it goes to show that programming does matter. I mean, we saw that throughout all the semifinals, that if it's biased toward a certain type of athlete, especially when there's more parity in the field, you know, certain athletes are going to just do better based on that programming. You know, and athletes complain about it because they're like, oh, that's not good programming, but it may just be that, well, it's not good programming for them.
Right. I also have been hearing this phrase go out a lot recently, which I don't know if I agree with it or not, but I don't know if it's a cop out or what people are trying to use with it. And I get it in a sense, but I've been hearing this thing like, because you just said like, oh, all legitimate sports do this. But I've been hearing this new thing that's like, oh, CrossFit isn't necessarily a sport. It's always been called the test of fitness. Okay. And we're trying to test who the fittest on earth is. We've never claimed to be a sport. We're just a test.
Yeah. Well, they have the sport of fitness at the game. So,
right. So I they're like, we're not a legitimate, basically what they were saying from it, like, and it's other commentators I've heard say is like, technically we're not a legitimate sport.
For sure.
We're something that's trying to become one, but we really at the end of the day are just trying to test for the fittest person on earth. And we've gotten that every year. So we can't always expect something like the NFL would do.
So I think,
which I I disagree with that statement, but I get some of it.
Well, it's a scapegoat though to not being professional.
Yes.
Because everyone at the end of the day, like I think most people actually do want to be professional, like in everything that they do. Like we're wired to like do things well. Some people don't do that. And so then their excuse for that is, well, we're not yet professional. So a better alternative to that would just be like, hey, we're not there yet, but that's what our pursuit is.
Yeah, we need to be a sport.
Yeah.
I think though, what I was going to say earlier was I think it's part, and all this is speculative, right? I think it's part of CrossFit's original culture and identity and philosophy. Like even Glassman with affiliates, where he was just like, I mean, it was like a Darwinian approach, like the fittest will survive. We're not going to provide resources. Like we'll slap their name on it and let them go. I mean, he literally said something to that extent. I don't want to quote him. I can't directly. I wonder how much of that. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like early on with Dave, like he wanted to, I don't know him personally, but he wanted there to be more structure. He wanted to make it more legitimate. And then there's a pushback from Glassman where it's like, okay, now we're going in the wrong direction philosophically of what the company I wanted it to be. And I wanted it to be more about health and not sport. And now I wonder how much of that is still, I don't know. Because now obviously Glassman is out, but that seems to be the way that we're running it, is more of just like the let the fittest survive, like just whatever. Like that's kind of how it felt this year, is like,
which is so weird because like CrossFit methodology is like based on part of that like fitness wellness continuum, finding somewhere in between, and like that athleticism is part of being fit. And I felt like that's something our sport shows, is like, not that all our athletes are super healthy, don't get me wrong, but that like typically our athletes are actually pretty healthy.
It feels like they don't care. Now, I know they do. I know Dave cares tremendously. So I hate saying that, but perception is reality. That's what this season has felt that way.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you guys don't really care that much. Now I know they do. And I know there are a lot of people at HQ who do care and they care about the sport, but that's how that's my perception of it. I don't know how you guys feel. Like,
yeah. I think that's right.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard because I feel like I've seen both sides of things a little bit, like the CrossFit end of things, of like them not catering to the athletes at all. And then I feel like I've also seen on another side, like missing some of the like toughness of the original athletes in CrossFit, and how they were, dude, before like Rich won the games, like what did Graham Holmberg make when he won the games? Like 25K or something?
I don't know.
Like, and then the next year it went to like 250,000. Like literally none of those guys were doing it to make money. And then all of a sudden, like it was growing so much in a good way that people started doing it just to make money.
Yeah.
That were gifted enough to be really good.
Well, Matt was very open about that, right? Like why he was in it, right? At least initially he would say that very openly.
But I think that dude even loved, I could be wrong. I've never really talked to him about it, but it looked to me like that dude also just loved CrossFit.
And he loved to compete.
Yeah.
I'm saying in the early days. So the reason he got into competition, he's like, I've heard him say it was like, hey, I want to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not saying that at all.
And I just think that really infiltrated the culture, and that's not where the sport started. And we almost need a balance of both sides. Like we need athletes that just love it again and just want to do it, and maybe do something else on the side in order to do it. That's what we used to have a lot of. We had a lot of athletes that had jobs so that they could be CrossFit athletes. And then we had a sport that almost was taking advantage of that and never legitimizing itself, so that people didn't have to have jobs, so that they could just be athletes. And I think there has to be a balance somewhere in the middle between the two parties, instead of them just hating each other.
So CrossFit needs to start a business, a manual labor business, where they employ games athletes.
So let me ask you guys this then. If you came in, you're CEO of sport or the director of sport next year,
you don't have to answer that question.
That's why I'm a coach.
Yeah. You don't have to give like your definitive answer now, but like, what are the things that you would do to make the season a little bit more streamlined? Dom, I know you already talked about like the skeleton concept, but like, would you keep in person? Would you take it out? How many semifinals do you have? Do you have semifinals? Is it just tour stops around the world that get everyone to the games? Like, what structure would you say that CrossFit should use?
I would try to remove as much online as possible. I think I would keep the open. Yeah. I think the open always has to be a staple. I think it's one of the most unique things of any sport, is that someone like myself can just jump in and do a workout right next to Haley and get my butt kicked. And man, it's just cool. And that is the foundation too of our fans, is our fans can actually relate to these athletes. I think something I've actually thought about a lot about this portion recently. One thing that made CrossFit so unique, and this ties to the open thought, was we were seeing behind the scenes stuff of these athletes' lives that were pursuing this that you don't see of like Tom Brady's life, or, well, we see more of that now with like Netflix docs and stuff post career, but we don't see that day to day as they're leading up to the Super Bowl, right? We're like, credit to Savon and some of those guys, but there was behind the scenes stuff, and CrossFit media was pumping out content that was like helping us relate to these athletes in ways, in unfiltered ways that we've never seen any other sport. And I think people in the gym were like, I'm working out like that. They're working out like that. I can even maybe do one of their workouts that they did on that video tomorrow in my gym, just scaled, relating to athletes in that way. So then people are showing up at the CrossFit games and they're like, I know that person. That was the unique part of our sport that I feel like we've started to miss. And we have to find a way to create events, I think, and allow media to come back in that can produce that type of content. Because if we do that and people get related with the athletes again, then the games are going to grow, because that's what we were. Like, people were watching Rich throw down with his buddies and play flag football in between training sessions. Yeah. And they were like, that life looks really cool.
Yeah.
Right.
To your point about like being able to go into the gym and do the workout, maybe it's scaled, but still being able to do the workout that you saw on the documentary or on YouTube is what makes it special too. Because it's like, I can watch Tom Brady. I love Tom Brady. I love watching football, but it's like, I'm never going to get back out on that field with pads on and play the game, but I can go into my CrossFit gym or do it in my garage and I see a workout that some high level athlete did and do it. And suffer kind of the same way that they're suffering, which is, it makes it like a really cool and unique sport that way.
Yeah. And that media was like free.
Yeah.
You would just like, I would wait, like I would watch the games on YouTube, and I think tons of people used to do this, and you would wait for the behind the scenes to come out, and you would like want to watch those. And
Savant's wry sense of humor, just interviewing people.
And just like hearing the craziest stuff about people's lives and like watching them go through. I rewatched one of the really old documentaries because I was thinking about this, and there's like a scene of like Dave Lipson with Camille on like the edge of a mountain pushing a sled. And I was like, this makes absolutely no sense. There's no purpose, but she's just like cursing him out the whole time. And I was like, dude, this is what made people like want to watch this. Cause you're seeing people just like do the wildest stuff.
I've said it for our own media too. Like just the behind the scenes of the games, like when Ben, had a camera and just following the team around, or like Dre had the camera, just following people around. It's just, that was the stuff I ate. I ate it up because it's storytelling.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
and
what
this
you're doing.
Sport offers so much storytelling.
Yeah.
Like where I just was this weekend was the absolute most insane thing I've ever been a part of in my entire life in sport. And this story that could be documented at what just happened at the NorCal Classic is literally, no one could write that script.
Yeah.
No one could write it on both sides, the female and the male sides. Now, do I think that's necessarily good for our sport? No, but it would make an incredible untold Netflix documentary. Yeah. Like the one they have of like the Gators, or like whatever new one just came out about like Brett Favre. It'd be like untold NorCal Classic.
Classic.
I hate all the Brett Favre hate. My son Brett.
I was like, come on, because of him.
Still amazing.
I was a huge Favre fan.
Oh, me too.
I have like 5 jerseys.
Awesome.
Yeah, he was my favorite player. Well, you were actually a Green Bay fan. Yeah, so you're even more legitimate.
Nice. I didn't know that. We'll have to talk about this after.
Yeah.
I too. Let's switch gears just with the time that we have left, and maybe highlight some of the athletes that both did the all the in-person events, and then those that had qualified through the online portion.
Yeah. So who do we have qualify online? Haley? Was that our only?
I think that was it, right? Because Austin
had already qualified.
Was not online. Yeah.
And then Jack was just short. He was like 15th.
Mm-hmm.
And then he made it through Syndicate. And then we just had Jorge through NorCal. And then I'm missing people. We had Troy. I know she has a coach, but I think they use Compete a decent amount. She made it through the Wadland, the same one I think Roman did. Her and Roman made it through Wadland. That was also pre-online.
Here's a list.
Oh, this is our whole list?
Yep.
Nice. Austin. Oh, yeah. I forgot about Brazil. Camila Quintero, Luisa Marquez, Troy, Roman, Haley, Enrico. I forgot about Enrico. I think he comes down in July to train. Rosama, Morteza, and Jorge. Man, Jorge taking that. Jorge and Nate tied. That's crazy.
Yeah,
62 and a half, something like that.
It's crazy.
What going through the list, and obviously you were at a lot of those. Like, what were some of the memorable moments of the either online with Haley, because obviously you were there with her for every single event, or the in-person competitions?
Yeah. I think once the leaderboard was released and seeing like Haley, like I think in 9th or something, and she repeated that burpee workout last minute. And I think if she didn't do that, I don't think she would have made it. So that was crazy. Her 4:30 Isabel is crazy. Like people don't expect that from her. So that's fun. That's always fun to see.
Miley's Isabel. Awesome.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seth's doing Isabel 3 times.
Yeah. 3 times in one weekend. That was
2 times in one day
insane.
and PRing on his last attempt. That was pretty cool.
Definitely some memorable moments there. I would say in the in-person events, for me, I think just like 2 back-to-back competitions of 2 Mayhem male athletes having to go at each other.
Yeah.
That's a wild experience.
For the last event.
Yeah, that's kind of wild to deal with. I think like a cool personal win was like when Nate and I went out to TFX and he got 3 event wins that weekend. He had never won an event at any CrossFit comp. Even when he won the teenage games, he never won an event. He got all top 5s. Yeah. He had a lot of seconds, but he never won. So that was his first time like
it's cool.
getting some event wins. So that was really fun. And just a cool moment for us to like sit there and be like, wait a second, we can do this. Like you're good. I didn't know you were good. This is cool. So I think a lot of those moments are really fun for me. Just like a lot of the relationships in there when workouts go bad, walking athletes through that, seeing a lot of progress for athletes. I don't know if you guys experienced that at all with in any stage, age group or whatever, but I just felt like I saw my athletes just like do things we've been trying to do for a couple years, but now that we've passed that 2-year mark and it's like year 3, they're reaping. And I used to talk to them all. Miley's a bit of an exception because she's a freak. It's been about 1.5 years, but like Nina, Nate, Jess made the games on a team. Like they're all reaping things that we talked about 2.5 years ago. And I was like, when I first talked to them about that stuff, it was really just like, hey, it's going to take a few years. Yeah. This isn't a 1-year thing. And there was so many moments of doubt during year 2 for all of them of like, should I keep doing this? Can I do this? What does it look like if I don't make it year 3 or things like that? And to see all of them, like Nina's been top 10 at 3 straight semis this year. That's insane. Last year she was like 24th or 25th. Like Nate getting top 5 at 2 semifinals. Jorge getting 24th last year. I think he lost to Nate significantly at semifinals last year. The only workout he did good on was the snatch ladder. And this dude comes out here and gets top 5 on a row run.
Yeah, I mean,
like combo.
Awesome.
Nate's progress is impressive, but you kind of saw that trend.
Yes.
Right. Like since you've been here, Jorge seemed to make the biggest leap.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
and I will credit so much of that to Jorge, because when he made a decision to like lock in for this year, and once he realized that the individual field is not the team field after getting destroyed the year before, and I think it was a lot of that, he started to learn how to compete and he started to recognize what was necessary outside of the gym. And he made all of those switches. I did none of that for him. All I did was force him to run like 4 times a week. Right. But he made the nutritional changes. He got input from like, he reached out to Fikowski. He was getting input from him for like stuff that he knew he really struggled with, like locked in his recovery.
I mean, I was even
changed his whole life. Like
I was talking to him recently.
Is,
what do you do for fun at night? It's like, just wind down a little bit, go to bed.
Yeah.
Like that. Come on, man. Give me more. Like, what have you been doing? He sounds like he's just been like, dialed.
And it helps that he's played like high level baseball, in college and like been on the verge of, potentially being major league potential to getting an injury and missing stuff like that and being able to mentally work through those things that I think pay off when you're in situations like he was last weekend. But man, like I think just seeing athletes progress over that and what they were thrown at this year, like, is there even going to be a season at one point to stay locked in or to come back and choose it and try to make it happen? Like, I think that says a lot about the resiliency of all of our athletes, like, that have just grinded this out. It's cool.
One of my favorite things is seeing an athlete make progress mentally. Like, you see them do a workout 1 or 2 years ago in a semifinal or in the semifinal that's online and kind of crumble when things go poorly. And then have those conversations, build that exposure into their training, and then bounce back. This year, I had one in particular that like really struggled with one workout, but instead of it being like, that's the end, I'm done. Okay, I'm going to go back and stay focused for the next, and then execute the rest of the way and make it like that. Good. That's what's really, really cool to me is when they bounce back that way, because like the physical attributes, sometimes they come and sometimes they don't. Like you just may not be able to get an athlete more fit over time. But being able to be more mentally resilient, especially in a sport that's so grindy and tough, is pretty special.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, and I even thinking about the in-person qualifying events with the different programming, like if it keeps going that way, it does kind of make it a little more fun in the off season, because if I know JR might be programming an in-person qualifying event, I'm probably going to make a lot of athletes do crash. Yeah. So then there's like other things I look at throughout the year that I want athletes doing to get exposure to different types of programming. And then it makes my job kind of fun, because then I don't just program like, okay, I know what's going to be at semifinals, because no offense against CrossFit, but it was starting to get a little bit predictable. And there's like levels to that where you can start to figure out trends and know what you need. And this shakes that up a little bit. And I don't hate that. It just needs to be a little more conformity across the board.
Just to kind of like maybe wrap up the conversation then, are you saying that you'll take your athletes that let's say, that are going to go to Syndicate, and their programming may be a little bit more biased toward those things versus those that are going to TFX or maybe that are overseas doing another competition?
Right. And that was even something like I did leading into NorCal. I went back to the last 3 years of programming, and I was looking for all the things that they do that I typically don't program for a semifinal event that I know CrossFit would never program.
Yes. All of the movements basically.
Yeah. And I threw a lot of that stuff in there, and I think that's why the boys did pretty good, to be honest. Even the girls did pretty good with that, because there was some stuff in there. Like even if I look at where a couple, like where Nina and Miley fell a little short over the weekend, Nina's was more on machines than it was the gymnastic stuff. So she was relatively prepared there, and that's something she needs to work on. And it was actually a good test for Miley, because that's actually where she falls back from the field. So she needs to see where she's at compared and be like, hey, we need this upper body work to happen. Because if I look at Syndicate and NorCal, this is kind of cool actually. The handstand walk ramp event and the pirouette event were actually two of Miley's lower finishes. That has a little bit of correlation for sure, right? Are they slightly different skills? Yes, but there's something about her in the higher skill handstand walk where she can't find speed compared to the rest of the females in the field, where if it's just a straightaway, she's there. So I have to figure that out for her as an athlete. Like, why, when the higher skill handstand walking comes about, does she get slow? Right. And that could be a skill deficiency. It could be a muscular endurance thing, because it causes her to be in a slightly different position. And I like that.
Yeah. And the only way that you learn those things as a coach is getting your athletes exposure to those. So like going and testing it, we were talking about that in a previous podcast of like athletes need to go and put themselves in uncomfortable positions so that they can learn and grow from it, because then she's not going to suffer from that next year, right? You're going to work on that and make sure that's not a limitation.
And props to all the athletes who competed like 7 times this year. I can't imagine insane. That. Just traveling to them myself was pretty exhausting. So I hope they can spread the season out a little bit more to help with that. And then hopefully maybe too next year, CrossFit and WFP won't overlap so much. Then that's also not a lot of back-to-back. I think that was pretty tough on a lot of athletes body-wise. Like I had a lot of guys deal with like their immune system going down, getting sick, but
yeah, that's right. I was going to wrap it up with that. Like give a ranking in like one thing that you would change, because I know I asked you guys about how you'd structure the season, and both of you kind of dodged the question.
I'm just not qualified.
Yeah, no, I don't think any of us are, but it's a good water cooler talk. I'll go first with the ranking. Let's just do like a school system, like an A to an F. I would say overall the season was a C for me. I just think that there were too many logistical issues from semifinal to semifinal. There were some that were really bright spots, I think, for the sport, and that highlighted how amazing these athletes are. And there's others that just seemed like too much of a cluster. But the athletes still impress me. Like it's so amazing to see what these high level athletes are capable of now in the sport and how much better they've gotten and how deep the field is too. You know, even some of these obscure names that people haven't heard of, like I'm watching people that maybe even are 20th place still execute really, really well. It's just they're not quite there to the top of the sport. The one thing I would say is to your point, Dom, like you got to spread it out a little bit more, because watching people do like, you know, one competition online, another competition, like it's a lot, and it's really a lot to ask with how hard these workouts are and all the travel that comes into it.
Yeah. And the demand for athletes to recover and like bounce back and have, again, like we did have one standardized workout across the thing, and you were doing 30 snatches back-to-back weekends for 4 straight weeks.
Yeah. They did it 18 times.
That's tough. That's tough. And then like keeping athletes fresh to do that, finding ways to prime their CNS so they don't
it's not a basketball game. I don't even think it's a football game.
Right.
Yeah. Like it's still different. I think like
the external loading.
Neurologically, it's different, right?
Yeah.
Like you're way more CNS fatigue from a weekend of CrossFit competition.
Yeah. I think I don't know if I can give it a letter ranking, because there's like things that I would be like D-, and then there's things that I would be like A on.
You got to average a score, Dom.
What would the A be? Like what were
just like the like moments at the Mayhem Classic, like things like that, with like the intimacy of the like being in an affiliate competition. Like you can't mimic stuff like that anywhere.
And the races at the end of those each event
have just been so cool. And I think that's the races that we're getting because there's been a little bit more of even playing fields at competitions, which is a good thing. That part is cool. Just like the back-to-back comps and what it was doing to athletes, like trying to figure out how to recover. It was an interesting challenge, but man, it's a lot to ask people to do at a high level. I think
it's borderline dangerous.
Yeah. Right? My last takeaway would just be like, I kind of liked the fact that every venue offered a different climate. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but like when you look at football, I know basketball is always the same because it's in an arena. But when you look at football, like sometimes you got to play in the snow. Sometimes you got to play in the heat. Sometimes you got to play in the rain. And I was just thinking about them all. Like the Mayhem Classic was kind of like hot here. Then you went to Syndicate and it was like kind of freezing in there for me. Yeah, it was. But then like we went to NorCal and it was like a literal death out there. But I kind of liked it. Yeah. Because I was like, who's going to survive this?
Funny you say that. I was actually thinking about that. It's kind of cool to see because I was sending you the stuff on heat, training, because I was reading it that night. And I was like, that's kind of a cool wrinkle, of course, because I always love the nutritional side of things too, where I'm like, who's actually going to be professional this weekend? Right. Like who's going to do the little things to stay cool throughout the weekend? How much of a difference is that going to make? Right. I mean, you tell me how much it was.
It was cool. Like, for example, from the beginning, the whole way on, like Jorge and Nate, they had people either helping them or doing it themselves. They got hats, soaked them in cold water, and they walked around with like bags of ice the whole weekend with towels in them. Yeah. And they're constantly doing it. Like Nate brought a cold water bottle out with him. So after the row, he dumped the whole thing on his back and went for the run to try to cool his body temp down. Like those are things I didn't see tons of other people doing till later in the weekend. And I think it was hurting them on the first day, right? Like little things like that, that's the fun part about different sport. And I think if we had more variance in that, instead of just like always in an arena for semifinals or things, I like that portion of it. So,
all right, Jake,
cool.
You're
great. Yeah. I mean, you guys brought up all the A's and like the athletes and that.
All right, give me one thing that you'd want to change.
I think, I would give it a D. I'll say the grade. Again, it just felt chaotic. It felt disorganized, felt messy. It felt like CrossFit. Again, it felt like they didn't care. I'm not saying that they don't, because it felt so hands off, like you were saying, Dom, earlier. So that's why I would score it a D. It didn't feel like they cared, even on we talk about it all the time with business, right? Just doing the little things to take care of people. It just didn't feel that way this year.
Yeah.
To be honest, even as crazy as to say, if I'm just being really honest, as a coach in Mayhem performance coaching, and that's my career, I got like disinterested a little bit. I know that's kind of wild to say, but it just felt like a lot. Felt clustered, felt disorganized. It's hard not to get discouraged by where it feels like it's at right now. So it helps when you're at the comps. When I'm at Classic, at Syndicate, and you're like, but it's hard not to be at Syndicate and look in the stands and go, there are more people at the 615 Throwdown 2 years ago in Nashville than there are. Dude, there's going to be more people at the Atlantic Coast Classic, like the old Bacon Beatdown in Florida, than there were at Syndicate. Yeah. Maybe the whole weekend combined. Like, and that's discouraging.
And
Yeah.
So
I think there's so many factors to that.
Yeah.
Like with how you choose to.
you go back to the old
events.
regional system where it's all like, I mean, you're just pulling people in. It's going to get,
I think it'll continue to change for the better. We just need a good push and the right people in charge, and we'll do that. And I think too, like all of us still do it for the athletes, and that's what's extremely motivating to see these athletes that are okay with going out there and there not being many people in the stands because they're doing it because they love it and they love the pursuit of excellence and to continue to see progress in their performance. And that excites me for the future. I just hope that they can go in line with each other where like the sport continues to pursue excellence at the same time that these athletes are, because athletes are risking everything and putting their life on hold for a while to be able to train and compete at a high level.
Yeah. And you're spot on. And I think just there are athletes out there still, and I coach some of them that still hold the CrossFit Games athlete as like the ultimate achievement.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Like that's enough for them. Even if they don't make money, if they can be like, I was a 3 times CrossFit Games athlete, or I podiumed at the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
It's worth something to kids still and to people that are competing.
I'll say Seth is there, man. That guy he just wants to go to the CrossFit Games.
Right.
Like he wants it bad.
And that's a good thing. I don't want that to be gone.
Yeah.
I agree. All right, to wrap this up, I'm going to ask all of the viewers to then give us your thoughts. What do you guys think? What would you want to see next year for this season? Open stay, open go, online or in person? How many semifinals? How would you set it up? Give us your response in the comments.
Be gentle.
See you guys.
Yeah.